Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today, Michelle Wolf, is a naturopath, author and lecturer, and the topic we'll be discussing is constipation and other digestive health issues. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Megan.
So, Michelle, constipation is a very common problem. Could you describe the cause of constipation?
Yeah, sure. There are several causes which are lifestyle causes because of the modern day lifestyle. The number one cause is a lack of water. So if you are somebody that has a very active lifestyle and you perspire a lot or you go in saunas, you're going to need more water than someone else. But the amount of water you need is also based on your body weight. It's also based on how much salt you have in your diet as well. But on average, if you times your body weight in kilograms by 33, you'll get the amount of mils of water that you should have. And best to have that water warm rather than cold. It hydrates better. So that would be the number one. The second would be lack of fibre in the diet. So a lot of us have junk food, more white products in the diet, more refined food, white rice rather than brown rice, and so on. So increasing your fibre through whole foods, so that would be more green leafy vegetables, whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, buckwheat. If you're someone that tolerates wheat, brown bread rather than white bread. And if there's still constipation, you can have fibres that are even more effective than that. So for example, 1 tablespoon of chia seeds a day and or a teaspoon of ground flax seeds or LSA a day. And the highest fibre out of any fruit is actually figs. And figs also contain a lot of calcium. So 1 to 2 figs a day can correct the problem. A breakfast that I would commonly prescribe is oat bran, which is very fibrous, mixed with hot water with some figs and some chia seeds and some LSA, and that's a really, really good fibre to get the bowel moving. If it's not resolved by that, then look at exercise. So we've become very sedentary in our lifestyle compared to how much we're supposed to move, and the body needs to move in order for the bowel to move. If you haven't got a certain period of time for normal exercise, then you can invest in like a small trampoline or a lymphosizer, it's often called. Bounce up and down while you're watching television. That's really good exercise for the gut. And the other thing I would say is that we're actually not designed to sit on the toilets in the position that we sit in. So in countries like Asia and in France, a lot of the toilets are holes in the ground, and the bottom part of your bowel opens right up when you're squatting. So there are several companies that have squatting stools that go around toilets that can make a considerable difference to constipation and easy passage from the bowel. After that, the next most important thing would be probiotics. So probiotics are often known as bifidus and lactobacillus as the main ones, but there are over 700 recorded species now. And they come from foods like plain yogurt. There's a Balkan drink called kefir, which has huge amounts of probiotics. That's readily available in health food shops, or you can make it yourself. And having foods like sauerkraut, so fermented cabbage as an example, small amounts with the meals. If you've addressed all of those and there's still constipation, then have a look at your stress levels. So that can have a big impact on the bowel with the mind-gut connection. So if you're holding on to emotions, often the bowel can hold on and you can be constipated. If you've got a lot of worry that's going over a period of time, that can often hold on the bowel. So there are specific lifestyle techniques that you can do to release that stress. If it's more complicated, you might want to see a professional counsellor or psychotherapist to help release that. And I would use specific herbs for the gut-brain connection and to relax the gut and calm the mind. So stress has quite a big impact, and quite a big impact. There can be more serious illnesses like hypothyroid that can cause.
What problems does constipation cause to the body?
So it can cause a lot of very uncomfortable symptoms. Bloating is a big one, which can be really uncomfortable for people. Sometimes it causes excessive gas. It causes a sluggishness, particularly in the brain, from the endotoxins going around in the body just not being cleared, and the pressure on the body. If you're very constipated, it also causes a lot of pressure on the heart, and it can make you feel quite unhappy and quite down if it goes on, both from the uncomfortable feeling and the toxins not being passed. So you've got an unhealthy fermentation that goes on in the gut. So, you know, every 24 to 48 hours, the food should be moving out of the gut. It's like a rubbish bin that needs to be moved out, not causing recirculating toxins and mind problems. It can also cause problems with sleep. So some people wake up in the night because their gut is uncomfortable. With some people, it can cause swollen glands because the fluids are just not moving through the body. And you'd be more prone to, like if you're somebody that suffers with eczema, for example, it will be worse when you're constipated because, because the toxins are not free flowing out of the body.
Do you have any tips for our viewers for some healthy eating?
Yeah, so there's lots of tips for healthy eating as far as constipation goes. So having enough fibre is very important. So always have your whole grains, so brown rice instead of white rice. Every grain you have a whole grain. Green leafy vegetables. Your 1 tablespoon of chia seeds a day can be amazing. A teaspoon of ground flax seeds a day. 1 to 2 figs a day. All these things move the bowel. And then have something in the diet that's got some culture in it that helps those good probiotics and those good prebiotics. So plain yogurt or kefir, which is actually a Balkan drink that has many times more good flora and fauna than plain yogurt. That's readily available from a health food shop, and it's spelt Kefir. And avoiding white foods and avoiding junk foods, avoiding fizzy drinks and drinks with colourings in, that all will help the gut and will help constipation.
Fantastic information, Michelle. If you'd like to know more about constipation and other digestive issues, and Michelle Wolfe, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, urban food specialist Mark Noyce is talking about innovative systems that make gardening easier. Welcome back. Our second guest today is urban food specialist Mark Noyce, and the topic we'll be discussing is innovative systems that make gardening easier. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Megan. Thank you very much for having me.
Gardening's come a long way. What are some of the latest trends?
Well, let's look at where gardening came from. Where we grew plants in broad acre farming, which we still do. We've been doing that for thousands of years, and it's got us to where we are today, which is fantastic. But most of our population lives in urban cities. We live near the coast, and we congregate in an urban jungle, basically, and we don't have access to those same broad acre farms. We're actually building over our traditional food bowls as fast as humanly possible. So here in Melbourne, for example, our food comes more than 100 kilometres from where we're sitting right now, every day of the week. So we've got to bring in food now from a long distance, and in some cases, some of our food travels thousands of kilometres to get to it. We call that food miles. What we're trying to do is turn food miles into food metres by growing our own food in our backyard or on our balcony. So food has come a long way in terms of how we grow. There are lots of different ways to grow food, and some of the challenges are, how do we do that in an urban environment?
Mark, you've talked about the wicking garden beds a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
So a wicking garden bed is not just like a garden bed in your backyard or a pot, for example. In your backyard, you might have a raised garden bed. It might just be at soil level where you grow some food. You put water on there, and quite often that water just goes straight through the garden bed, past the roots, and you're actually watering next door neighbour's trees instead. You put your nutrients on there. You buy some nutrients from the hardware store or the supermarket, and you pour those nutrients on, and they again go straight past your plants, your seedlings, and make your next door neighbour's trees look really fantastic. Gets into the groundwater and it's gone. In a pot, for example, where you pour water on there, it just goes down the sides and you think you've watered your pot, but if you actually break that apart, you'll find that it's really dry. And because when potting mix dries out, it doesn't attract water anymore. So what we want to do is we want to try to hold that water in the pot. So self-watering pots are just a really fantastic way of having a water reservoir in the bottom of the pot and allowing that water to rise up through the potting mix as the plant needs it 24/7. And we call that a wicking garden bed, where if you've ever had a dishcloth in water, you might notice that it rises up out of the water as it travels up the dishcloth. That's called capillary action. It's called wicking, and it's how water can travel up from a water reservoir up through the potting mix and then be available to the plant or the seedlings or whatever you're growing in there whenever that plant needs it. And it just does it naturally. So as it's being drawn up from the bottom through capillary action, a plant reaches down with its roots and sucks it up through suction. So when suction meets wicking, you've got a very happy plant. So a wicking garden bed is a containerised, sealed system that is perched above the water in the soil, so that we're holding that where the plants are for later. Because when it rains, we get a lot of excess rain in our urban environments, and a wicking garden bed captures that in its space for later reuse. So it's very climate adaptive. We can get through a lot of heat waves, and in some cases we can get our plants to survive for weeks at a time in the one containerised system. Let's look at a wicking garden bed. Its elements are: there's a sealed container, there's a water reservoir in the base, which is generally rock, then there's a geotextile layer to separate the rock and the water from the potting mix, then we put our potting mix on top, and then we plant in that, and the water wicks up through capillary action into the potting mix to allow the plants to grow. That's how a wicking garden bed works, or a self-watering pot plant works. There are some advances now where these wicking garden beds have a water reservoir with cones and an air gap between the water and the potting mix, so that we can have free draining and wicking at the same time. And that prevents root rot. You don't want root rot in a container because it goes pretty smelly actually. So by getting a little bit of oxygen, you allow the water to move up through the potting mix, you allow the potting mix to breathe, and I like oxygen and so do plants. So they like to breathe too. Allowing them to breathe gets it much healthier. Allowing the plants to breathe lets them grow more optimally. And so you're going to get the best out of your garden bed if you've got a wicking garden bed that can breathe.
That's fantastic information, Mark. So Mark, what's some advice for our audience in creating their own urban garden bed?
Megan, setting up your own urban garden is actually quite easy. With a wicking garden bed, for example, you can avoid losing all your water, you can avoid having roots come into it from your next door neighbour's trees. You can actually make it very ergonomic by getting it up off the ground and having that raised garden bed so that you're not bending and hurting your back when you're watering or tending to your garden. You can set up an urban farm really quickly these days by having a connectable modular garden bed system that takes the hard work out of gardening. Imagine coming home on a hot day and then you see your garden bed just wilting and dying because you haven't been there to water it. Well, a weekend garden bed solves that. A weekend garden bed gives the plants exactly what it needs 24/7. So certain types of plants can access water all the time versus others that don't like a lot of water can just take what they need. And just more comes up naturally through a weekend garden bed.
Wow, that's fantastic information there, Mark. Thank you. If you'd like to know more about Mark and the innovative systems that make gardening easier, go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest and another interesting topic. After the break, breathwork expert and life coach Christine Hart-Savage will be talking about reversing stress and burnout. Welcome back. And our next guest is breathwork and life coach Christine Hart-Savage, and the topic we'll be discussing today is reversing stress and burnout. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you for having me again, Megan.
Christine, can you describe stress and burnout for us?
They're two different things. So stress is something that builds up inside your body. So we often don't know we're stressed. So we go out into the world and something happens that we don't like or we're uncomfortable about it. And instead of allowing that emotion or expressing ourselves well, we tend to go into a little bit of shock and hold our breath a little bit, and whatever's going on at the time, that emotion we're feeling, the thoughts that we're having, when we hold our breath, it gets trapped inside the body. So then we go home and the next morning we get up, we go back out into life and we have some other stressful things happen and it starts to accumulate in the body. So stress literally builds inside us, it builds in the body. And the cells, the cellular memory holds it. And if we think of stress as an energy, so we've got life force or energy flowing through us, and every time we have a stress moment, it's like that part of that energy becomes crystallized. It becomes like a little marble that is blocked inside the body. So that builds up. So in the end, we can feel like the stress has got to such a point that we are a pressure cooker. So burnout is when the stress keeps building and building and building and building and building to the point where you are really full. That is burnout. Now that's very serious, because if we don't do something about burnout or stress at that point, we end up getting sick. And the other thing that can happen is when someone's really at burnout or breakdown point, as I call it, we're so reactive. It's like, it just comes up and these bursts, these outbursts take us over. So we're very emotionally charged. So we need to bring that down too, because not only is it not good for our health, it's no good for the people around us.
Christine, can burnout happen to anyone?
Most definitely. The thing with burnout too, strong people keep soldiering on. So we feel some stress, some pressure, and you wake up, you say, okay, you push it over there, and you just get on with the day, next day, the following day. And as it's building and building, you get to a point where it's almost impossible to keep going, but strong people do. They keep pushing through it. I can do this, and they don't get help. What I've found, it's across the board. It doesn't matter whether it is a younger person, a middle-aged person, an older person, whether these people have been, they're trained academically. I find that the people that I see mostly for this burnout, that when they've got to this point where they really are not coping, are people that run their own businesses, lawyers, doctors as well, and people that really are very professional, because they keep going and going and going. Even university professors I've had, they don't know where to turn, they don't know what to do. And the other thing with this, when we can have burnout or really strong anxiety and panic attacks, it's often people in the media. So people that are on television that are really confident and they're great, you would never think that they're suffering from burnout or panic. Also people like radio jocks, that are on radio, that are out there, that are funny, that are speaking to people. On a break, they might have to run into the toilet and try and get their breath because they're having panic attacks. So it can affect anybody. It doesn't matter where they're from, who they are, what they do in life. Burnout is a build-up of stress in the body and the mind.
Christine, is there anything you recommend that people can do if they believe they're experiencing burnout, or tips and tricks on how to prevent burnout?
Most definitely. Look, burnout's one of the big things that I work with because it's close to my heart, because in my life I got to that point of breakdown. I went through a breakdown, and this was through a marriage, second marriage. And in this particular relationship, I kept trying, and this is what strong people do, trying to make it work, trying more. Over-giving is what I call it. And you give more and you give more, because if you give more, of course, it's going to make things better. But we've lost ourselves when we do that. When we have burnout, the stress is built up to such a point that in the end, you have separated off from yourself. So you're disconnecting from who you are. You're disconnecting from yourself. Now, when that happens, you're also disconnecting from the people in your life. You're disconnecting from the world, basically. So it's a very lonely journey. And it's because we're blocked. We've got all of this stress in the way. So what we need to do, when you get to this point of burnout, we need to do a deeper type of releasing. So there's two things that I would suggest people do. One is something like a deeper sort of breathwork therapy. So that's a deeper process of breathing where it takes you into an altered state of consciousness. You go beyond your conscious mind, and your body relaxes like crazy, because as you're breathing, your energy field is opening up, opening up, opening up. That means every cell inside you is taking on new energy and oxygen, and that is also unfolding and opening up, and all the blockages caught in those cells then start to be released. So the person will experience different tensions and tingling and vibration and maybe emotion coming up. And every time they do this type of session, they're releasing more of that tension. So that means they're reconnecting with themselves again, bit by bit. It's a very powerful way to release what you have built up inside the cellular level of the body. Our bodies are so intelligent. Our minds are intelligent, but we're quite blocked. The thing that I find is that we're fragmented. So the mind is saying one thing, the emotions are something else, the body's in tension, and the soul or the spirit we're all out of whack. When you do deep breathwork therapy, it brings you more into alignment. That's why people feel this incredible calm come over them towards the end of the session, because they're lining up between their spirit or soul, their mind, their emotions, and their body. And when they leave, they can go out into the world feeling much more relaxed and much more connected to themselves and in balance. So that type of therapy is what people need to start releasing that deeper cellular level of burnout. We need to really reverse that burnout. And then as well as that, I would suggest people have a daily program. And they definitely need to learn to breathe correctly, so they need to find a good breathing coach. And I know one of those. And also have a meditation program as well. So that might sound like a lot, but it's not.
Thanks, Christine, for such wonderful stories and wonderful information.
Thank you, Megan. It's always a pleasure to be here.
If you'd like to know more about reversing stress and burnout and Christine Hart-Savage, go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And that's it for today, and we'll say bye-bye until next week.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like our Facebook page and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.